Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. A huge warm welcome to the show, beauties. As we near to the end of the year and descend to the darkness of winter, I wanted to share an invitation to something that will be a beautiful focus for our new year. Our upcoming free Meet Your Witch ceremony will be on the 15th of January, and it's a beautiful way to refocus on your intentions for those of you wanting to heal yourself, discover your gifts, and express your healer witch into the world. I would love for you to join us if you're feeling called and if you love listening to this podcast. So visit meetyourwitch.eventbrite.com to get your free tickets. For now, though, on The Secret Witch Show today, our guest is the magical Tad Hargrave. Tad is a hippie who developed a knack for marketing and then learned how to be a hippie again. Since 2001, he's been weaving together strands of ethical marketing, Waldorf School education, a history in the performing arts, local culture work, anti-globalization activism, an interest in his ancestral traditional cultures, community building, and supporting local economies into this work of helping people create profitable businesses that are ethically grown whilst restoring the beauty of the marketplace. In this episode, we explore how our deepest wounds often point towards the wisdom we're here to share with the world as healers. Tad offers a refreshing lens on marketing as healing, showing how integrity, honesty, and right relationship can become sacred acts of service. We speak about transforming our wounds into our gifts, learning to share our magic without manipulation, and reclaiming businesses as a soulful exchange that honours both the witch and the world. Let's dive in. Tad, I am so excited for this. I'm really happy that you're here as one of my own trusted guides. Your work has been such a lighthouse, I guess, for those of us wanting to share our gifts with integrity and without manipulation. So especially for secret witches, they often feel like a deep call to offer their medicine, but really struggle with the idea of marketing themselves. And I know for so many witches listening, they may have been burned by those manipulative tactics that we know in the marketing world. And so your stance, I think, on ethical marketing is going to feel like a breath of fresh air. So I especially love, of course, as we're here to discuss this, your worldview on wounds being where we find our gifts, and the idea of business as a kind of an act of service as well, I guess, in many ways. So thank you for joining us, and I'm excited to dive in. Welcome.
Thank you so much. When you say they've been burned, do you mean burned as in they've been on the receiving end of the shady marketing tactics, or they were taught how to do those tactics?
I think both. Yeah, I think both. So whatever you have to share in response to that. But where we normally start is the premise of kind of my work is that people are remedies for each other. So I often invite people to just share their stories around their own journey. So for you, I would love to hear more about your journey with alchemizing the archetypes of the hippie and the marketeer, because they feel so competing, right? So anything that you want to share around that, and then we'll dive in and see where we end up.
Sure. Yeah. So I kindergarten through grade 6, I was in Waldorf School. So, it's my hippie cred.
I love that.
And my mom was a homeopathic dealer in Edmonton, a distributor. And
I didn't know that because my background is homeopathy. So there we go.
Yeah, she was a distributor for Valeda and Vala products.
Yeah.
And, so I grew up with that kind of a hippie background. And then I got into business, got into personal growth stuff, volunteered at a local Tony Robbins franchise, and ended up doing sales for them. And it wasn't all bad, but there's a lot of the center of a lot of it is this pushy, aggressive, manipulative, go for the sale approach. And I didn't know any better. I was 18 and I just thought, oh, well, that's, I guess, what you have to do. And I think we grow up in a society that is so steeped in coercion. I think coercion is just about everywhere. And so, I just drank the Kool-Aid. I think marketing is just the formalization of the coercion most of us experience every day. Most of us, our mothers were probably coerced during birth. Just even to start there, we were coerced by our parents during childhood, well-intended as they were. School became a kind of formalization of the coercion, or church. And then you get a job, and now there's money involved. And then you are old enough to vote and discover the true meaning of coercion. And so it's marketing just kind of formalized the principles of this. And I was 18 and I just thought that's what you have to do. So I did it. And it felt so terrible. I felt so off about it at the kind of deeper soul level, like I was doing something wrong, and got that feedback from other people. And eventually that franchise collapsed. And so I ended up going and doing a bunch of social justice, environmental work, summer camps for youth in California, and starting my own business. And it took me probably a decade to unpack all of that. I mean, to get some space and distance from it, and then come across some sources that help me make sense of it. And that's been the basis of my work, is working with people who know they need to market, but it just feels so gross. And particularly for people who, like myself, drank the Kool-Aid and, they know it doesn't feel right. It tastes kind of sweet, but has a bitter aftertaste, and they don't know what to do with it or how to make sense of it.
I love that so much. And I know definitely that's been a big part of my work with you over the years as well, has been that, because I similarly had an MBA and went through, all the business training. And I think it's almost like so much harder to crack when you've kind of been there. So I really feel that. And something about what you just said there as well, in that coercion piece, really stands out to me. Like it's like there's this big cultural wound that is not just in marketing, it's like running through everywhere. But I think this is something that Secret Witches feel so deeply. I suppose being like sensitive, kind of women often as well, like we feel everything so much more, and we feel the truth, like we're looking for the truth. So I really love that you've named that. Yeah. And I guess, let me just feel where I want to go with that, because there's so much gold in there. I think one of the things that I really want to dive into is this piece that we're here to talk about how to turn our wounds into the wisdom we're here to share. But I'm just wondering if there's anything before we go in there. We just feel into it. I think, no, let's go there and let's see where we end up with that, because that's something that Secret Witches kind of, I guess we're taught that we have to, that we come and learn and to embody our healer gifts, and we kind of maybe train in something like Reiki or whatever it is, or, energy healing, or, homeopathy, or whatever it is that we've studied. And then often what can happen is we don't know how to share that with the world. So we'll go out and similarly in the way that we've approached healing, and which is often for the Secret Witch, like, oh, I want that quick fix and that quick fix and that quick fix. There tends to be then the journey into marketing. And when they approach the journey into marketing, this is true of my own journey. Like, again, we go for like, what's the quick fix that's going to help me to get my work into the world? Whereas for me, what I've learned over the years is that it's actually about almost like our medicine being an extension of who we are. And as we share our journey and share our story, of what we've healed and alchemized for ourselves, that's where the real gold is. So I'm just going to leave that there because it's quite a big topic that I've opened up there. But yeah, let me see if there's anything there for you.
Well, I mean, I think that's the traditional understanding in a lot of cultures of healing, or at least one of them is that I can't now, forgive me, but I think it was a Siberian shaman. But I've heard similar stories in other places where they had a dream. I mean, they got very sick and they had a dream where they were basically in the underworld, in the other world, and they were being dismembered, by this monster and then put back together. And like every part of them was being injured or cut up and then restored, and they were restored. And basically the lesson was anything that had been injured and restored in them during that process, they could heal in another person. But if somebody was struggling with something they had not gone through, an injury they had not had, they didn't have the capacity to heal them. And so this notion of the wounded healer, I mean, it's old, it's I'm sure you know the story of Chiron and Hercules, and is that something you share with your people very much?
Yeah, we're welcome to share that. That would be really informative, I think, especially given what we're here to talk about.
Yeah. Forgive the garish lighting here. Yeah. So I won't read it, but basically the short version, and this is worth, for people to look up the story of Chiron, Chiron, but he was a centaur, who's immortal. And he was roughhousing with Hercules and some other gods. And there was a poison-tipped arrow, and it was a kind of poison that would just kill you instantly. And somehow, accidentally, Chiron gets shot in the ankle with this. And he is immortal, so he can't die. But it's a terminal poison, so it won't go. And so the wound stays. And he does everything he can to heal it, but it's the kind of wound it is. And he's the kind of person he is. And so he just suffers, forever and ever. And he's trying to find relief for his own wound. And so this is where plant medicine comes from in that tradition, was him trying to figure out how to heal himself. Now, he gets relief, but he never completely heals himself. And towards the end of his days, Prometheus, of course, who's gotten fire for humans and then punished by the gods for it and suffering by having his liver pecked out, he volunteers himself to take Prometheus's place because he thinks Prometheus has suffered long enough. And then I believe as the story ends, he ends up becoming the constellation Chiron in the sky. And so there's a lot in there. And there's different versions of it. So, I would encourage people to read. But he goes on the path of healing to heal himself first, as most of us do. I think almost anybody who's gotten into healing, we've gotten in because we went through something, we were wounded in some way, and tried, probably unsuccessfully for a lot of years, to heal ourselves. We tried to a lot of approaches that didn't work, the quick fixes, the this and that. And I think if we get to be a healer, it's because we're lucky. There's a certain amount of good fortune that you actually found something that worked, because most people never do. That's the sad reality of it. Most people never, ever get the help that they desperately need. But a healer is somebody who's kind of become the adult whose support they were needing when they were younger. They weren't fed, to quote Robert Bly, they weren't fed, but so they became bread for other people. And so that's the old formula, but it means that you have a capacity and an understanding of a certain terrain, and you don't have that capacity and understanding in other terrains because you haven't lived through it. But that's where the credibility comes from. The credibility as a healer primarily does not come from the fact that you've got this degree and this certification and that diploma. You studied with this teacher or that. I mean, that's fine. That's great. That gives you tools, but it doesn't give you an understanding of the place, to use them. The heft as a healer, there's certain healers we all might know who are potent. There's a real heft to their words. There's a heft to their work. There's a kind of weight to it, solidity to it. And that word heft the etymology of it is so fascinating because heft means weight, of course. It means a certain amount of heaviness. It's the way we usually use it. There's a kind of gravitas to it. But also it's in Icelandic and in Northern England, this word gets used as to mean tradition and to mean like you would, it also is related to sheep specifically, where you would take the sheep out when the sheep are born, you take them out to the mountainside for the first time. And now, of course, like in Iceland, this mother line of sheep has been going to this mountain for 1,000 years. And they have recorded every mother's name. And so when the sheep in Northern England would be brought to this hill or this place for the first time, they would be hefting the sheep. But then there's this other definition. If you look in the etymological roots of heft, you also find heath and heather. So there's something about a place, the land itself. And so I think if you tie it all together, what it says is, if you have been taken out by life to the mountainside and had to endure the elements of that place, then you are now familiar with that place and its topography. And you are now capable of guiding others through that place. You don't know much about the other places, but about that place, the sheep would come to know, when there's a snowstorm, these are the rocks or trees you go behind. They don't know that the first time they go out, but after their first year or first couple of years, they're familiar with it. They've been hefted to the place. So the heft is something we're on the receiving end of. Heft is not something you can kind of internally generate. You get hefted by life. And that leaves you with this potency and capacity in regards to a specific thing. And so then the tragedy is people will look, it's that old story about the guy's walking down the street, sees a guy looking, it's, pretty pitch dark out, but he's under a lamp and he's looking. He said, "Did you lose something?" He said, "Yeah, I lost my keys." I said, "Where'd you lose them?" He said, "Oh, just over there, down the street." He said, "Why aren't you looking there?" "Well, the light's better here." So it's very tempting to want to look in all the places for our niche, for our role in the community, except the place that we know, the place that we're familiar with. Where life knocked the keys out of our hands. That's the place you get to know on your hands and knees, and you become familiar with intimately.
Yeah, I love that. That's just the most beautiful way I've ever heard that described in my life. Thank you for that. That was gorgeous. Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, because I know you kind of spoke to it a little bit there, but the question that comes is how does this kind of principle, I guess, and I say principle because there are universal laws that back it up. So probably with your mum being a homeopath, one of the homeopathic principles is like cures like, and I always say, if we've been through something and lived through something, that principle of like cures like literally means that what has cured us is going to help those who are similar to us. The principle is similia similibus, like cures like. And so I guess what people may be wondering is how that applies then to marketing. How do we, if we've kind of done the work to discover that gift, and I think there's also another piece around we don't often want to look at that because it's the wound, right? So there's something maybe to explore around that. Also, how does it shape our marketing?
Yeah, well, So it seems to me that we get into business for a certain reason. If you're a healer, it's just good to go back to why did you start? What got you into it in the first place? And almost always it's I got the arrow in the heel and I spent years trying to heal myself from something that was, unbearable. And so that just gives a direction for the marketing because, if you're going to go out into the marketplace, you've got to have something to offer. And the trouble is that so many people go out there saying, oh, I can, in the healing world, it's, well, I've got all these modalities, and that's the best part. They can help anybody with anything. So what are you offering? I'm offering all the things. For whom? Everybody. Do you have a certain style? Any style you want, and it's this people pleasing thing. It's this, and it's, of course, it comes from just a fear of if I say I only help these people, then I'm going to lose out on all this business and I need money. And so there's the fear of that. But you can't, there's no such thing as an offer, first of all, that everyone will like. There will be so many people that don't like your offer because it's too general. That's actually probably most of it. People will look at it, or if they even notice it, frankly, because it's a generic, they've seen it before. I mean, we can all, if I were to say somebody, make a poster, like a generic local healer poster, somebody who does healing work, everybody would draw a very similar poster, be a lot of floofy language. It'd be a list of symptoms a mile long, and I can heal you from everything. And this is, you get it. So that is, we're losing people because of that. I mean, this notion that, oh, if I just stay open in general, that I'm going to get more clients is worth testing in your own experience of if that's actually ever been true. Because what's happening in the marketplace is people are themselves in pain. They are looking for a solution to some wound that they have. And if I have a headache, right, and I go to the pharmacy and there's one bottle of pills and it costs $1. And this bottle of pills says, generally make pain better medication, right? And there's another bottle of pills and it's $50 and it's like, make the headache go away in 1 hour medication. And I've got a crippling headache. I'm spending 5 times more on that medication that's just for me. So this idea of, right, our deepest wounds are often a doorway to our truest niche. And the niche is the thing. The wound is kind of the way we find ourselves to this. But niche, I define as just, this is your role, the role in the community you want to be known for. That's all. And so before you think about making an offer, people think about marketing as this magical powder you sprinkle on something. Once it's already made. So you take something generic and then you sprinkle marketing powder on it, and all of a sudden it's everybody loves it. But it's not that at all. Marketing starts with, okay, well, what's the role that I want to be known for in the marketplace? And for a healer, the marketing starts with, what's the terrain that I know best? What's the place that I've had experience with? And then we make offerings around that, helping people who themselves are still kind of where we were. Like your ideal client as a healer is probably you 5 or 10 years ago. That's the most, and then you come up with offers for them. So then when you're writing, a sales page for these people, what you're doing is memory work. And what you're doing is you're writing a love letter to who you used to be, because you were them. You remember being them. And so you're writing to them. And this makes the sharing of our work and the articulation of it so much easier, because we know who we're talking to. And one of the worst things in marketing, is people just have no idea who they're talking to. And so they're writing to nobody about nothing. I do all these things, and who are you writing to? They're just kind of writing to the market, but there is no market, really. The market isn't buying. The people in the market are doing the buying of things, and each person is there with their own problems. So if you're trying to speak to the whole market, just imagine at a farmer's market, everybody come to my stand. I've got a little bit of everything. It's sort of a novelty and curiosity once. And then it's like, oh yeah, they got a lot of stuff kind of, but nothing really fantastic. It's not that can't be its own niche, right? You can't have, like, you got the corner store, and that's where you go for your milk, your bread, and it sort of has a little bit of everything. And that's its role. But what if every single store on the street was that? What if every single store on the street, and that's what's happening with healing. Every single healer on the street is a general store healer. And a few people can do that. I mean, that's a legitimate role. Like, yeah, I just kind of have a bunch of things, and I can connect you to the next step, and I can show you where to go for the specific healing of this. That's a great role to, but if everybody's playing that, it doesn't work. And that may be a genuine, authentic role for somebody to play. But if you've gone through a particular wound and then come out the other side, this is an important distinction too, is, it's best to niche around the scars, not the wounds. Niching around an active wound is dangerous. Sharing on social media about an active wound is not a good idea, I don't think. Because a wound is a genuinely vulnerable situation. Like, that's giving people access to the insides of you. And unless you trust those people with your life, I mean, a wound is something you share with your close friends and your therapists and your healers, but you don't share that in the marketplace. What you can share are your scars. Scars are a little extra tough, as skin goes. And, but it's good to be clear about that. The last thing I'll say is, around this connection of marketing and this wound and healing is, I remember it hit me one day, branding is a funny term in marketing. Like, what's your brand? And got to brand ourselves. And do you brand yourself as a healer? And it can feel so off because it feels so corporate and soulless. But the term brand, I mean, literally comes from, like branding cattle. With a hot iron, and you'd brand the ear or somewhere, so you could know whose cows were who's in. If somebody stole your cattle, or if they wandered off, you know, that's my cow. We're branded. Yeah. And I think life has done that. That's another way to look at the wound. We have been branded by life in a certain way with a certain experience that we would never choose, that was excruciatingly painful, but it's left a mark on us. And that mark lets people know that we're the real thing. Because, oh, I see, you come from that place and you've been branded in that way. Okay, I can trust you. I think everybody knows, like, if you were struggling with real depression and you couldn't get yourself out of the funk, and then you had a choice, and one was a PhD student who'd never been depressed in their life, but had studied it, had lots of conversations with people, or you could work with somebody who'd gone through a decade-long depression and is now the most joyful, person and alive person, and came out the other side and healed it. Everybody wants to work with that second person. I remember being in a van with this fellow, Hale Makua, who's a Hawaiian kahuna, and he asked me, he said, you know what the negative polarity of knowledge is? And I said, well, ignorance. He said, no, it's theory.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah. And so it's this is what happens, is if you took a Reiki course and you took a quantum healing and a theta healing, you went to some Wiccan retreat and you did all the things. That's all theory. Good for you. You learn from a book. It's not bad, but that's what it is it's theory. Now, you may learn how to apply it in the real world. That's great. But if you learned how to apply those tools to yourself first, now it's not abstract anymore. This is no longer theory. This is practical knowledge. Like, no, I know this tool has worked. It's worked because it helped me get out of this. And now you know how to do it. I wrote a piece years ago called The Cartography of Shame. And just this understanding, like shame, if you look at shame as a feeling, okay, but you can also look at shame as a place that you reside in. And so then you get familiar with the landscape of it. And then maybe you get out of there eventually, but then you're talking with somebody else who's in shame. And you're like, oh yeah, have you seen that old abandoned house there? Oh yeah, the one that seems haunted. Yeah, I know. You just start talking about it because you know the place, and they're so relieved, like, oh my God, you understand what I'm going through. That's what a good sales letter does. That's what, um, good a good book will do on these topics from healers is you read it and like they get it. They absolutely understand what it's like to be there. And that is what gives us credibility in people's eyes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love everything you shared. There's so many threads that I could pull out. But I think what stands out is to the last point that you were just speaking to is that this marketing really as a witch or as a healer is about coming from a place of honesty and integrity, which is almost like the opposite of manipulation, as we've been conditioned.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my experience. I mean, especially for healers, this is important because it would seem that so much of healing work is trying to help people, it's the old thing is I can't heal you. There's a healer inside of you, and that's what does the healing. It's your own life force that does the healing. And so anything that we do as healers that is disconnecting people further from themselves is causing harm.
Yeah.
And coercion is one of the worst things we can do to pull people away from their own sense of authority, because coercion is saying, I know that feels off. I know that feels wrong, but I'm going to apply all these tactics to get you to do something that goes against your own conscience, that gets you to not trust yourself, not trust your feelings, not trust your own inner guidance. I'm going to pull you away from that. And and this is harmful. I mean, and as you said at the beginning, a lot of these secret witches have been harmed by marketing, have been on the receiving end of it. It's terrible. I mean, if we look at money as a kind of strange expression of our life force, I mean, we put in so many hours of work, this money in return, and then we got a stack of bills, and that stack of bills, in a very practical way, represents a lot of our life energy. A lot of the calories that we ate have become stored in this, and that could be used for the betterment and healing of the world. But no, instead somebody comes and seduces us and takes the money from us for their course that's not a fit for us, that's no good. It's such a tragedy. It's taking all this life energy that could be used for healing, could be used for good, our own healing of others, the healing of the world, and it gets put into this marketing machine, and just gobbled up. So, I mean, amen. Basically, I'm saying amen to what you were saying.
I love how you expressed it though, because I know so many secret witches listening to this will really resonate with that. I think it's just a world that we're so used to. We almost assume that everybody's going to do that. So to hear you sharing, we can be healers, and we can be healers from integrity, and that is our marketing, is like a whole different radical worldview. So I think that's this episode is healing in many ways for the secret witches who have been kind of fighting and feeling the tension of that. One of the other things that I loved, there's two things. There's what I was hearing in what you shared. I think we spoke to this either at the beginning or I think it was just before we pressed record, was that you were talking about how our wound is our gift. And what I was hearing in that is, like, as we reclaim that wound and kind of collect the gold from it, that's what becomes our unique story, and that's what becomes what we're here to serve in the world. Whereas I think we can often misassume, and it's not to say that our tools aren't useful, like all the things that we've trained in, whether that's homeopathy or Reiki or whatever it is, like they're still useful, but it's the way that we share our story around the wound that we've traversed and the intimacy we've had with it, and what that activates in others that helps people to understand, oh, this is the medicine that I need.
Yeah. Well, to clarify, I didn't say our you said a connection between wounds and gifts. So I didn't say that, but
Yeah.
I said our deepest wounds are a doorway to our truest niche.
Yes.
I think there's a different conversation about gifts. That there's two different kinds of gifts we could imagine.
Mm.
The first is they're gifts that we're born with. These are just they come with the package of us. Things that we've always been good at. And you kind of know these gifts because you're confused that this isn't easy for other people. Like,
Yes.
what do you mean color coordinating is hard for you? What do you mean hosting a party is hard? What, that's so easy. Making beautiful things, it's hard. Like, there's certain things we're good at and other people just aren't. And then they're good at things and we're like, how is that easy for you? God, what a nightmare that is. So we're born with certain things. We come in and they're not directly connected to the wounding we experience in life. Then there's a second kind of gift, which I think we have to develop. There's certain capacities, meaning to survive the wound, you had to develop certain strengths or skills. So if you grew up in a very, let's say, tense home, you maybe had to develop a gift of humor just to survive because there was violence and you learned that humor could diffuse things. And maybe that meant you didn't get beaten that day. And so you became very, very funny, very, very humorous. And now if that continues unconsciously, it can be used as a deflection forever and you never let anything in, you never feel anything. There's that. But it's also can be a superpower if it's used in the right ways. If we stop doing it unconsciously as a reflex, it's not that, because of course some part of it just wants to throw out the whole experience. But if you throw out the whole experience, then you throw out the gift that came with it. And so it's like, okay, we can heal from the experience and still keep the gift. I mean, this is the most mind-numbing thought. It's very difficult to wrap a mind around, is that good things can come from bad things.
Yeah.
That it's you went through an experience and it was bad and there was not much redeeming about it. It was hellish, which you went through, and yet some good has come from it. And what's that old line where it says, eat down medicine, spit up poison. That's the novice. Easy to do. These are the internet trolls. You take something good and you just twist it and you make something ugly in the world out of the beautiful world. And you just, that's a novice. That's a real rookie move. It's the young, bitter, cynical person. It's like, well, good for you. Didn't take a lot of effort. Now, you drink down medicine, spit up medicine. Okay, intermediate. It's not that hard to do though. And then drink down poison, spit up medicine. There's the master.
Ooh, I love that.
And so that's the healer is, we've had to, I mean, we're force fed this stuff, but now we're trying to take something ugly and turn it into something beautiful. And that's what the gifts can be that we then bring forward into our work. It's like, I learned how to do this thing as a compensation, as a survival tactic. But now, used consciously, this is actually a source of enormous beauty in my work and in my life. So I would just make a distinction that there's two different kinds of gifts. And those, I would say in marketing, we could imagine there's three things. As a healer, your wounds will give the direction of your work. Yeah. It gives you a sense of just where to head roughly, as opposed to I'm going to help everybody with everything. Yes. Your gifts will give the shape of your work. It gives the kind of structure in a way to your work. Like your gift might be group facilitation and entertainment. That's one kind of way of doing your work, but the gift might be one-on-one connecting. Your gift might be working with your hands and making beautiful things. And so you bring healing to the world by bringing beauty in like that, or so your gifts give a kind of shape. And then there's your nature, which is a different thing too. That you have some people shy, some people outgoing, the Myers-Briggs thing. We got these personalities that we came in with, our nature, and that gives the tone of our work. And it's the braiding of those three things that I think becomes the work of a healer. But you can see how this falls apart very quickly in modern society, because probably from a young age we were shamed for our nature, for being who we were. Nobody helped us identify our gifts at all. Nobody was there to say, wow, you're really good at this, and affirmed the gift and gave us some mentorship in the honing of that gift that we were born with. And then the wounds we have were unhealed. And, we, because you get an unhealed wound and then a compensating tactic, this gift that came from it that is unconscious, that's actually getting in the way. And so a lot of the healing work, I think, is the bringing into alignment and braiding of those three things. And then that creates something very strong and resilient that, each one of those on its own, if left untended, just becomes so brittle and breaks.
Yeah. I love that. There's a real like nuance and depth to that I think just is not available in most marketing teachings, and in even a lot of healer teachings, and it very much aligns with my own worldview as well. So I love you brought that in. The other thing that I wanted to speak to is the piece that you said around like sharing from the scar, not wounds. Because not the open wound, I guess you're saying, because that is also something that I think many secret witches have been always taught to do, again, by marketing. So I'm wondering if you could speak more to that, because I know I've been asked this question by healers before, is like, when's the right time to share, the kind of wound that I've been journeying with?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, above my pay grade in a way to even comment on it. Because the reality is you'll probably find out after. Yeah, you'll share it, and then you'll realize, was that too soon or not? That's the reality. But I think there is also a certain moment, like, okay, I'm not scared to talk about this anymore. I don't feel ashamed of it anymore. I'm able to, like, first of all, just, can you talk about it openly with your friends and family? Or, I mean, maybe your family was the source, but with your community, with the people who you know and trust, is this something you're able to share and you don't get reactive about? Because if you can't do it in a small circle, fuck, I mean, you bring it online, and now people are going to see it. And have you met people? Because it does, if it's a real wound, I mean, all it takes is one careless comment to just ruin you for a few weeks. So it's and we can do it in stages. You can titrate it. Just share a little bit, see how that feels. Share a little bit more, see how that feels. But this, somebody just going on and saying, I went through this terrible experience, you're opening yourself up to a lot of projections, to a lot of unkindness. And again, if that's a real open wound, I mean, then the salt and vinegar of people's, vitriol and judgment, or well-intentioned words, hit that wound, and it's gonna hurt way worse than it needs to. So, and if you've got friends, you can also ask your friends, your therapist, the healers you work with, like, do I seem ready to you? I'm nervous. And just get a thumbs up or a thumbs down, because maybe they're like, wow, no, absolutely not. But I would take it slow. I mean, just to share a little bit, see how that feels to do it. You might just start talking about, when I was a kid, I went through some rough things, and that's it. And just see, how did that feel to put that out? How was the response? Then it might be, yeah, there was a lot of anger in my household as a kid. And just see how that, you can, and then you don't have to share any more details than you want to. I mean, another thing I'll say is that sometimes, because of certain circumstances, it's not appropriate or safe to share the details of a story. And this may cause harm to others, cause harm to you, to add those details, but you can speak from the story instead of about the story.
Mm.
Derek Jensen, he wrote a book called Language Older Than Words. And in it, he talks about the way he was sexually abused by his father, and his father beat his whole family, and how they, it just was kept silent. They didn't want to speak because they'd be beaten. Of course, he didn't want anyone to know. So everyone kind of made it silent. And it's a book about also how we've silenced the natural world, how women were silenced, how indigenous people were silenced, animals and plants are silenced. But then he wrote a second book called, I think, The Culture of Make-Believe. And I gave that book to a fellow I knew who was also abused by his father as a child. Now, in the second book, he doesn't talk about what I'd learned in the first book. He never mentions the dynamics with his father. And I was talking with my friend who'd finished the second book, and he's like, wow, it's a powerful book. And I made the comment about how he was abused by his father. And this fellow John, he leaned back, he said, I knew that. He said, that wasn't in the book, though. He said, but just from reading the book, I knew that he'd gone through that. And so you can speak from the story. You can speak in such a way that is informed by, from and of that place, and, give people some credit that they can pick up on what's in between the lines and in between the words of what you're saying. You can speak about the kind of wound in a general way, but again, if it's a terrain that you lived on for a period of time, you can speak about the broader terrain and people are like, oh, they've been there. I recognize, the choice of words, the description, the feeling of it, the tenor, the tone of it is recognizable to people.
That's amazing. I love that you shared that example and the nuance between those two different approaches as well. I think one of the other things that has come up for people is this idea that we have to be fully healed to be able to share as well. So I don't know whether you've got anything to add on that either. But
you've got to be fully healed of the thing you're helping people with. Now, healing is just, it seems to be an infinite journey, just always ongoing. But if let's say if you've healed this much, then to me, you're qualified to help people that much. And in fact, I would probably go down here.
Yeah.
I'd only be promising this kind of healing. It's that if you start promising more than you've healed, and you go up here, now you're in trouble. Now you're out of your depths. This is a terrain you don't know yet because you haven't, fully healed. So I would always be sort of promising less than you've healed, just a little bit less. Because you don't have to be far ahead of people, but you do have to be ahead of people.
Yeah.
It might work out, but if you're taking people, it's like you're a camping guide or something. You're out into the woods and you're hiking out there. And now this one area really well. And that person says, I want to go over there. Now you've never been over there. And okay, it's similar. It has a similar topography, but it's a little bit more elevated. It's a little bit denser in the trees than where you've been. So there is stuff you've learned from there that could probably help you, but you're setting yourself up for, like, I've never been there. And I would say the appropriate thing for the healer would be to say, hey, I'd love to take you there. I haven't been there myself. So, there may be some other people who can help you better, but that's not an area I know. I don't feel comfortable taking you there until, let's come back next week if we want to hike there. And during this week, I'm going to go hike there myself and check it out and see how comfortable I feel. And I might feel really comfortable, but I got to check it out first.
I love that. I think because we assume that it's so linear as well. You're either healed or you're not healed. But what I'm hearing is, and this is true of my own worldview, is there's always going to be somewhere we've got to where there's people that haven't got there yet. And so it's like almost just meeting yourself where you are honestly and knowing who the people are that you can help is what I'm hearing in that. Yeah, gorgeous.
Yeah. There's a quote I'd love to read. So it's fellow Henry Newen.
Yes, please do.
And I read this years and years ago, but it goes like this. It says, nobody escapes being wounded. We all are wounded people, whether physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. The main question is not how can we hide our wounds so we don't have to be embarrassed, but how can we put our woundedness in service of others? When our wounds cease to be a source of shame and become a source of healing, we have become wounded healers. Our own experience with loneliness, depression, and fear can become a gift for others, especially when we have received good care. As long as our wounds are open and bleeding, we scare others away. But after someone has carefully tended to our wounds, they no longer frighten us or others. When we experience the healing presence of another person, we can discover our own gifts of healing. Then our wounds allow us to enter into a deep solidarity with our wounded brothers and sisters. To enter into solidarity with a suffering person does not mean that we have to talk with that person about our own suffering. Speaking about our own pain is seldom helpful for someone who is in pain. A wounded healer is someone who can listen to the person in pain without having to speak about his or her own wounds. When we have lived through a painful depression, we can listen with great attentiveness and love to a depressed friend without mentioning our own experience. Mostly, it's better not to direct a suffering person's attention to ourselves. We have to trust that our own bandaged wounds will allow us to listen to others with our whole being. That is healing. And so I'll make the distinction here that he's talking about when you're in the encounter with somebody. Yeah, but that's different than when you're in the marketplace sharing your story. Then it's appropriate. People are coming to hear your story, to hear about your experience, because they also want to know, like, are you for real? Can I trust you? Do you have credibility? Is there heft to you and your work? They want to know that. And then, when it comes time to, because we've all had friends where you're in pain and they say, oh my God, I know. And then they go off on their tangent about the pain they're in. And you're like, oh man, this sucks. I was really hoping for some empathy and I got, your life story in response. So it's, but the wound is often, it's like the blood that comes out of the wound. This is what heals the wound. Like there's a healing force inside of us that's coming out. And that's what we get in touch with when we've been wounded, if we're lucky.
That's really gorgeous. I love that. And I love the distinction you made as well, because when I think in terms of like the archetypal remedies, I believe that people's storytelling is kind of almost like the activation of the recognition, like, oh, there's medicine here. And so I think what you said there around like the marketing work being sharing our story so that people can resonate. And I think it's that resonance that then allows us to then hold the space for whatever comes from that as healers.
And the last thing I'll say too is that you're talking about sort of archetypes. And I would say that one of the shifts in healing is also when you go from working with archetypes to being a part of the architecture. Yeah, that where you go from, because archetypes are sort of an internal thing, and we've all got them. Everyone has a grandmother inside them that they can go to for comfort, and probably a whole bunch of grandmothers they can go to inside. And one of the poverties of the modern world is that there are so few actual grandmothers out there. We've got elders within, but there are so few elders without. And so this would be my call for healers is don't be satisfied with only the archetypes. Work to become a part of the living architecture of the, renewed village that might be, that you become in that way. The architecture is the archetype made manifest.
Yes, I love that. I don't know if I'm hearing what you said right there, but I'm almost hearing people becoming their own archetype within the outer world. Is that might be not what you you meant there, but almost like manifesting their unique gifts into the world, as it's almost like they're the archetype in the world. I don't know if that's necessarily what you meant, but that's what it brought alive for me.
Yeah, I think there's something like that. We come with a certain kind of energy and a certain kind of gift. It's like you it's the difference between, saying, well, you have a healing hut inside yourself you can go to, and building a real physical healing hut
Yes.
that now people can come to. Now, that healing hut might be built from your own experiences of healing. Like, let's say you were a mother and you had terrible experiences during birth with the medical system, and you're like, I want, and you go through a lot of healing, and you go inside and you realize, like, oh, this should have been a different experience, and you get that nurturing healing from within. And then you say, I'm going to build a building that mothers can come to when they're giving birth, that is what I needed, that I never got. I'm going to actually put that into form
Yes.
and function, rather than just feeling.
Yes. I love that. Yeah. It speaks to me of like really embodying our medicine, like bringing it into the real world.
That's what a business is. A business is
Mhm.
architecture.
Yeah.
If you're building a business, if you're creating courses, if you're doing workshops or retreats, that's architecture. And so then the architecture, of course, has to carry that energetic frequency of the archetype, the archetypal experience you've gone through and healed. It's informed by that. It's for those people. And because once it's architecture, it's real. Until that, it's sort of theory. It's a little abstract. And that you, having gone through something, you're going to be capable of constructing something that will actually be the kind of space that again, the space you needed when you went through it, which is almost certainly then going to be the space that people behind you need too. And this is the gift, when I talk about business model with people, it's like, how do you build it in that kind of a way? So
I love that so much. I know we're kind of at time now, so I just wanted to kind of bring it back to people finding a little bit more about you and like which part of the journey you help people with. And my sense is that kind of manifesting piece. So yeah, I'd love for you to share more around like any next steps people can take if they're at that kind of manifesting phase, the bringing it into the tangible form, and where people can find out about you as well.
Sure. Well, I'd say, if you're really interested in diving into the wound and niche, if from a marketing standpoint, there's a colleague of mine, Jeffrey Van Dyke, who's fantastic, Vandyk, and he knows more about this than he's already forgotten more about it than I'll ever know. So I would check him out. He does, I think, Courageous Messenger is one of his things. But my work is, I certainly do talk with people about this, the wound is niche thing. But it's, I would say my work is for people who are at a place where it's like, it's not a hobby anymore. They want it to be a business. They want this to be something that generates income, that sustains them. That's where I'm probably most useful. Is the translating of this into architecture, the translating of these impulses into something that can have a chance of working in the marketplace. And my particular place that I help people is not, there's a lot of tactics out there, Facebook ads and Google ads and making apps, and there's a lot of tech, and I just don't know almost anything about it. But my work is, I'd say the center of it is really helping people hone their niche. And for healers, a lot of that's around the wound. And then helping people articulate their philosophy, their point of view, their kind of cosmology and worldview, the maps and models that they're using, honing that, and then constructing that into an offering, into an actual structure of a business, and then how to share it with the world. So that's where I fit. But I'm not a tech person. And I'm not also a therapist. I like deep work. If somebody's still really working with their wounds, there's probably better people to work with than me on that.
Yeah, no, that's gorgeous. And I think, will be really interesting to many people listening. And I can absolutely vouch for your work, particularly around point of view marketing as well. And all of that sort of stuff is something that, is absolutely transformed my own work as well. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And it's been magical. I loved every second of it. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, did I ask you where people can find out about you?
Oh, sure. Marketingforhippies.com. That's the
Perfect.
main place.
Yeah, gorgeous. We'll pop that all in the show notes. Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Oh, this is one of my favourite episodes on business, witchy business, because Tad is one of my favourite witchy business teachers. So here are my takeaways. Coercion is everywhere, from birth to business. But healing begins when we choose integrity over manipulation. We are branded by life, marked by our wounds in ways that show where our true medicine lives. Our wounds show us the terrain we know best, the places we can now guide others through with humility and heart. True marketing is love in action, remembering that business can be a sacred exchange, not a performance of persuasion. Credibility doesn't come from certificates, it comes from heft, the weight of having lived, healed, walked the land, and returned with wisdom to share. When we turn our wounds into architecture, creating real offerings rooted in what we've healed, our work becomes medicine for the world.